Hey there, it is Sunday, October 8th, 2023. And hello, thank you for joining us. We are DPF guys. I am James, the DPF guy, based in Atlanta, Georgia. When we focus 100% on diesel aftertreatment services for anything with a diesel engine and an emission system, most of our customers are truck drivers and fleets, but we also service aftertreatment for off road equipment, diesel passenger vehicles, and stationary stuff. That's going to be generators, pumps, rock crushers, and more. We'd like to say if it's got a DPF, we can clean it. Disclaimer, you should always talk to your mechanic about any concerns you have with your engine or truck, and any pricing discussed here may or may not apply to you and should only be used as a guideline and not any form of official quote for any services by DPF guys or anybody else in the country, on the globe, in the solar system, or around the galaxy. Important shout out to my wife, Maria, without whom I couldn't do any of this. It is our anniversary today. It's our anniversary today. And so I'm going to make this shorter than normal. I'm going to go through just a handful of questions and get the heck out of here so I can have dinner with my wife. And everybody who is married, who has been married, understands how important all of this is. So please, if subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us wherever you might be, where that really helps us a lot. And definitely make sure that you don't miss anything. If you're watching live right now and have a question, please type it down or over in the doodly doo, wherever that might be. And for anybody who has TikTok, please feel free to jump over to TikTok. We've got a live going there. Hey, friends at TikTok. And they've got kind of a backstage view of what's going on here. And, so if you want to see what's going on TikTok, we do post a lot of short and hopefully informative videos there. All right, let's get on to question number one. And this came in, hang on a second, I want to make sure I've got the right thing here. Question number one, boom. Hang on a second here. So do you recommend anyone in NYC with great experience in the Freightliner 2016 Detroit? I'm having such a bad issue with my truck. Let me drop up. I'm kind of doing too many things at once here. And this went from cleaning my DPF filters to getting new ones. And then his DEF tank, a doser, new NOx sensors, both inlet and outlet, new harness, bringing the one box out of the truck and inspecting. Why is he not converting NOx? Presently has a low efficiency code, not allowing the truck to run, and had to perform bypass to NOx sensor outlet to try to keep making money. Any suggestions? I'm missing this thing. I miss any suggestions I'm missing. This thing is turning into a mess. Hang on a second here. Okay, so this is really an important question. And in fact, just as I was getting ready to go live here on YouTube and elsewhere, I got a question on TikTok that said, hey, I've got a 2016 Cascadia. Can you clean the one box, etc. So I'm going to touch on this, and I'm happy to answer this question in more detail if you ever wanted to talk to me. But this is not an uncommon question for Freightliner Cascadias with Detroit engines with the vintage of about 2015. And that can mean it's a late 2014, pretty much all of 2015 and early 2016. So a lot of people that say, hey, I'm having an issue with my 2016, it's usually the same issue. And this happened to be because things were affected by an ECM programming issue that covered that kind of range of dates. And it involved the fuel map in the ECM, or the engine control module. So apparently the original programming of the fuel map caused the engine to overfuel, which produced excessive heat in the one box, which really didn't affect the DOC or DPF, but definitely affected the SCR over time. It wasn't some big critical blow up your engine failure. It's very subtle. But keep in mind, I'm not an engine expert, but let me do my best to explain the basics of this and also touch on what a fuel map is. So a fuel map, kind of in the context of engine management, is how much fuel a vehicle's engine needs to inject in the combustion chambers at different operating conditions. So in a diesel engine, one of the main things the fuel map controls is how long each pulse, each little spritz of fuel is injected into the engine. And with the 2015 vintage, again, late 2014, all of 2015, early 2016, um, the Freightliner fuel map apparently, from what I can understand, injected too much fuel. The fix for this problem was a software update, but by the time the problem was discovered and a fix released, a large number of trucks were already damaged, and sometimes damaged in a way that you wouldn't even know it until much later. Um, kind of like your body being exposed to some sort of toxic chemical, and you may not see those effects until many years later. Um, and I said before that the DOC and DPF were not as affected by this fuel map issue because they are more tolerant to higher temperatures. Though you might notice cracked DPFs in trucks with the fuel mapping issue. Um, and just what I mean by higher temperatures, it's not the physical media, because they're all made of the same stuff. They're in on the Freightliner. They're all made out of cordierite, which is a mineral discovered by a French gentleman. We talked about this a few weeks ago, called something Fafon Cordier, but he discovered this mineral had a really high melting point, of almost 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and they didn't really use it a lot until Owens Corning started making catalytic converters for it, and then ultimately used it in the after treatment. So the point being, the material, the actual physical brick, the honeycomb, that's fine. The DOC has catalytic metals in it, but those metals, platinum, palladium, and rhodium, all have very high melting temperatures. All of them, 2,000 degrees ish, plus or minus. The SCR, um, has a much the metals, the catalytic metals in the SCR have a much lower melting temperature. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what'll happen is, so this will start getting weird, right? So the SCR can only handle about 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit before the catalytic metals inside it begin vaporizing out of the SCR, causing it to begin to fail in a rather sneaky manner, because it doesn't just fail like a light switch. It starts to just get kind of weak, right? And it'll start giving you these weird codes. So the failure of the SCR is often masked by codes like def quality, which will cause you to do just useless things that don't solve anything. Replacing your def header, replacing the def tank, draining all the def, or the codes for NOx conversion or SCR efficiency, which will cause a mechanic oftentimes to throw NOx sensors at the problem. And the bad thing, this is the bad thing, because when you bring your truck into the dealer or to the mechanic, what do? You don't bring it in at 50,000 pounds in the box. You bring it in bobtail or bring it in empty, right? Usually bobtail. And so the mechanic will do a bunch of stuff. Will run a regen, put new NOx sensors in, put on harnesses, change out def editors, and you pull out of there, the truck's running just great. And the reason being is that, when the truck is lightly loaded or bobtail, um, it, on a light load on a flat road or bobtail, and it's not laboring. You're not really stressing the engine. It's not um, putting out the NOx, the chemicals that are designed to be eliminated by the SCR at the rate that it would when you're 40,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds in the back and heading up a hill. And that's when the lights come on. So sorry to say, 9 times out of 10, this means that you need a new one box. Now, again, we're in the repair business, in the recovery business, in the refurbishment business. Um, our goal is not to sell you new stuff, but if you do need a new one box, we do have them. Um, the they come complete with filters and everything. They have 3-year warranties, unlimited mileage. But talk to me first, because it might be a case where they can be recovered. But if you've got anything that's 2014, 2015, 2016, and you're having codes that say NOx efficiency or def quality that's making you pull your hair out, or the truck runs great unless it's under load going up a hill, that normally indicates that you have a failed or a failing one box. And really the only solution for that is to replace the one box. I mean, that's really a bummer. All right, let's go to question number 2. And this one is, I have a 2020 Kenworth. Again, 2020 Kenworth is a fairly new truck. almost brand new, with a Cummins X15 engine, and something got so hot in the SCR and the decomp tube that the tube got cherry red and the SCR is completely melted. What happened? Now, keep in mind, I said that, I said in the previous question that a the material that makes up these components can handle, 2 or 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit before they start melting. So that had to get super hot to destroy the SCR. And also, let me explain what a decomp tube is, just in case the lingo doesn't make sense to some of you. Um, DEF or diesel exhaust fluid is 32.5% urea and 67.5% purified water. No, that's not urine. It's different. Urine does have a small, just in case you're curious, or your Bear Grylls, 2%. If you pee, it's 2% urea, and DEF is 32.5% urea. That's not the part that smells, by the way, even though people say it is. The water doesn't do anything other than carry the urea, so water needs to be boiled off to let the urea do its thing down in the SCR. Boiling the water off is called decomposing the DEF, and this happens in the decomposition tube, and it's often shortened to decomp tube. So the DEF sprays into the decomp tube, the water boils off, and what's left, the urea, makes its way downstream into the SCR. So I spoke to the person having this issue, and while an overheated after treatment system would normally tell me that there's something going on with the engine, and or a turbo issue, you'll see this happen if you lose a turbo and you spray a bunch of oil. It basically creates just a really hot fire in your after treatment. It will melt your DOC, your DPF, etc. But this customer has no codes, no issues with the engine. The engine is fine. And it really appears that what was going on was further down the line in the decomp tube and closer to the SCR. And I have not seen this before, but here's what I know. The DEF dozer, which is what squirts this stuff in a really fine mist, shoots it down into the decomp tube, and then goes further into the SCR. It does have coolant circulating through it. Now, not through the DEF, but because the DEF is mostly water, when it gets below freezing, it'll freeze solid. So what they do is on almost all trucks is they will circulate coolant all the way down. They'll have a heater in the DEF tank to melt that. They'll circulate the coolant all the way down around the DEF dozer and back. And it's not there to cool the DEF dozer; it's to heat it up. This customer happened to be in California, so they would never even think of DEF freezing. But that's what it was. What you've got going on there. So let me show you what the DEF dozer for this particular truck looks like. Give me a second. All right, so notice the connections. The connection towards the top, the silver connection circled in red, that is where the DEF would flow into the doser. So that's the top middle nipple, and the coolant is in the bottom, the black plastic nipples that are circled in blue. And so the coolant would flow in and out through the lower two nipples, and that made me think of him. But I won't even talk about that. But so I don't know for sure, but I strongly suspect that there might be a leak between the coolant side of that DEF dozer and the DEF dozer itself. Small crack, hairline crack. And so what's happening is, I believe, is that the coolant, the propylene glycol, is getting mixed into the spray of DEF and is spraying in a very fine mist in this hot decomposition chamber, and is starting on fire. Believe it or not, coolant is actually flammable in the right conditions and will definitely catch fire at 650, 750 degrees or above. And guess what? 750 degrees is a very typical temperature inside for engine exhaust and in the after treatment. And combined with the coolant being delivered in a very fine mist through the doser into a very high temperature space, it is entirely possible, excuse me, entirely possible that the DEF dozer literally turned into a blowtorch and got the the decomp tube, cherry wet red, burnt up the SCR, really caused a ruckus. So I recommended to the customer to do a dosing test, where you pull the doser off and you use your diagnostics computer to do a dosing test and spray the def into a beaker and test the fluid for coolant, or just smell it and see if it smells like coolant. I know he already tested the def that's in the def tank, and that tested just fine. And I'm not 100% sure that this is the answer, but right now I'd be willing to bet on it. It's these really oddball ones like this that can really throw you for a loop. And I do kind of like it when people, text me or call me and say, I've got this weird problem. What do you think it is? We can help straighten them out. And so we'll see. I'll find out tomorrow. I guess we'll talk to the customer. They're in California, so they're a few hours behind us. But when I do find an answer for it, I'm definitely going to do a video about it so you can check back for more. Okay, question number 3. What do we got here? And this one's interesting because came in via text. Oh no, this came in from TikTok. So that's a lot of people ask questions on TikTok and on the other channels. So I just had a one box and filters put in my 2016 Cascadia. And again, remember, we're talking about that 2015 vintage, which is going to be late 2014, all 2015, early 2016, with the DD13 engine. And it turns out this particular truck services an in-town account and only drives about 50 miles or less 5 days a week. So very short runs. And the guys at the Freightliner dealership told me that because I'm in town, not getting the DEF system hot enough, it's best to idle my truck all night. But my understanding was if I idle it, that means more soot and clogged filters. What do you think or recommend? So this is really a good one. Now, if he's driving 50 miles, that should be plenty to get that, get everything hot enough. And the truck is smart enough where if your filters are getting plugged up normally from due to normal conditions, um, it'll call for a parked regen. It will take care of it. So I don't think it's the 50-mile drive that's causing the issue. The fact that it's shorter than normal, it's still 50 miles. It's still pretty decent for a diesel engine. Um, but uh, it's my hunch is he's having a problem likely due to something upstream in the engine. And what I would recommend that he do is get the compression tested because low compression in one or more cylinders can cause dieseling and leave unburned fuel, which will result in excessive soot. Plus, the unburned fuel can create excessive heat because when you do a regen, the truck will add a bit of diesel fuel using the seventh injector on the DD13 engine, and when that unburned diesel fuel touches the catalytic metals in the DOC, it produces the heat, produces the 1,000-degree temperature you need to actually do a regen. And so, if your um, engine is not fully burning all that diesel fuel, not only will you produce soot because it's burning dirty, some of the fuel is not burned, and it will hit that DOC and basically leave the truck in a permanent regen status, which can not only, well, the excessive soot because of the lack of proper combustion will plug up your filters and also face plug your DOC. It's very difficult um, to clear off a face plug on your DOCs with just a regen. There's like a DOC face plug regen you can do. It takes several hours, but it's not 100% effective because the hot part of the DOC is on the other side, not the entrance to it. Um, and and so it can again a poorly running engine, a poorly combusting engine will give you a face plug on your DOCs and can definitely plug up your DPFs. But again, what's the root cause? Uh, Depending upon how many miles are on the truck, I would say a quick compression test, which should be pretty easy to do using the Detroit software, and find out if you got low compression in one or more cylinders. Which, from what I understand, the resolution for that is doing an overhead and getting that valve, the valves, whatever. You got to get the compression right. And like I said, I'm not a mechanic. Talk to your mechanic, but I see plenty of these issues to help me kind of think about what might be causing it. Um, it could also be a dirty air filter because if your engine's not breathing really well, again, it'll be the same thing where your fuel doesn't combust completely, produces a lot of soot, and can have unburned diesel, which can have issues further down the line. Um, so there you have it. Amazingly enough, that was super quick. Um, and um, so if you need to get a hold of us for any reason, of course, type your questions down below in the doodly doo, wherever it might be, or you can text them to 404-999-1361, or jump over to TikTok, and we will be doing a live here for a bit. I'm going to check to see, make sure I'm not missing any chats here. Um, I am not. Excellent. Um, but yeah, I said, just feel free to leave your questions down in the comments. And if you need to get a hold of us for any reason, please text or call us 404-999-1361. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of this long format stuff. Like us on Facebook, find us on TikTok, etc., etc. So thank you all for watching. TikTok people, I'm going to get to you in a minute. Um, and I just have some good questions that have come in while we were talking here, and we're going to get to that. And now I'm going to finish up here so that I can go have dinner with my lovely wife. But thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.